Before we get to a vice president pick, former Vice President Joe Biden still has to get the nomination at the convention in July. There's still a race to run, and the decisions made now could come back to play during the general election. Joining us now to analyze the state of the race is Brad Polumbo, the Deputy Opinion Contributors Editor for the Washington Examiner. So, Brad, Joe Biden, he's kind of pulled away at this point as the front runner. We kind of know that at this point. It's almost mathematically impossible for Bernie Sanders to pull off any type of upset, anything like that. But Biden has gone a little bit missing as of recently. I say that in the sense that he's made limited media appearances before just a couple days ago. Is this something that we should get used to heading into the general election?
Yeah, well, Biden's team is going to be as desperate as they can to get him in front of the media, to get him on air from his basement studio that they said took 4 days to set up. Like, come on, guy, you got to get with the technology a little bit better than that. But they're going to be desperate to get him through Twitter, through YouTube, through video, through social media, to get him out there in any way possible, because it's really harmful for a campaign when you can't get out there and talk to voters face to face, have events in person. That's honestly disastrous when you're trying to unseat a president, because it's really hard to call attention to yourself. And we've seen Biden struggling to do that. But that also could be a blessing in disguise, because if the spotlight's not on you, you can't really mess up.
No, and I think that's a big point for him, too. For example, when he's out on those speeches, that's usually when he makes the gaffes. At the debates, he's had pretty fair appearances, actually. He hasn't said anything that's too outrageous, the same way that he has on the campaign trail. Now, of course, that's because cameras are on him at all the time. It's a little bit easier said than done for me. I make gaffes all the time, and I'm not running for president. I have no excuse to do it. But when we move ahead, this COVID response is going to be pretty big. I mean, it's something that the president is kind of narrowly focused on right now. It's all that's in the news right now. It's going to be a campaign issue. How does Joe Biden really match up for that being the issue of the 2020 race?
Well, Joe Biden wants to frame this as an issue of competent leadership in a time of crisis. So he had a TV ad that I saw out, I think it was yesterday, where the whole point was it showed different clips of President Trump where he initially downplayed the severity of the crisis. And some of those clips, the things the president said, look really out of touch now, a couple of weeks later, that we're in full lockdown mode. So I think Joe Biden's pitch, though there was a little bit of dishonesty in the ad because he played the clip where he misleadingly suggests that President Trump called the coronavirus a hoax, and he did not call it that. But I think for Joe Biden, the main thing that he wants to focus on here is, hey, I'm a stable, competent leader, and President Trump is too unstable to be trusted in a crisis. That's the argument he's going to be making to voters, but it remains to be seen if he can really get the message across.
And on the other side of that coin, too, I think President Trump is going to try to set this up as being, who do you want leading us back out of this crisis when it comes to the economy? President Trump can also lean on what he has done so far before this outbreak, the record high numbers for a lot of different categories when it comes to those economic figures. Whereas, for example, the Obama administration is oftentimes criticized for the anemic growth that came out of the 2008 recession. So I think that might be something that they try to compare it to, although I think it's worth noting that the two aren't exactly the same. One was kind of a cyclical type of business recession, whereas this one was brought on by the government telling people not to go to work. I think it's a little bit different, but that's likely going to be the matchup that we see going into the election. And a big part of this, too, is who's on the ticket for Joe Biden. We know that Vice President Mike Pence will most likely be there. There's been speculation over the past couple months about maybe Nikki Haley or anything like that. That seems to be kind of an outside type of possibility. As far as Biden, what is he looking for when it comes to a vice president?
He's looking for identity politics, plain and simple. That's honestly all that Joe Biden and his camp are going to be looking at when it comes to a vice president, because you could have the best vice president in the world volunteer to serve as his VP. And if he's a white man, Joe Biden is not going to pick him. Biden knows that he needs a woman or a person of color on his ticket to balance out the diversity, because that's what the Democratic base demands in 2020. Yes, they care about policy, but they also care about wokeness and what box you check off on the census. It's a shallow way to pick a candidate, but frankly, that's what it's going to come down to for the Biden camp, because that's where their voters are at.
And I think it's a little bit ironic, too, that they kind of keep pushing the idea that they are the party of diversity. And look at the two remaining candidates in it right now, two white men above the age of 70. It's a little bit ironic, for lack of a better word. But before I let you go, too, how important is a VP in the race? Is it something that's kind of just more so a talking point for a little bit and it doesn't really sway the mind of voters? Or does it actually play a big role?
Well, I don't think it does a lot to sway voters. I mean, you look at someone like Tim Kaine, how much did he really impact Hillary Clinton's chances? Not a lot. But what I'll say is that this election, more so than ever, I think the vice president choice does matter because of the age of the candidates. I mean, Biden looks very old, very frail. President Trump is no spring chicken anymore, right? So we have the very real possibility that something tragic, God forbid, no one wants to see that happen to any politician of any party. But God forbid you have a president that passes while in office. That's looking more likely than ever, frankly, in this upcoming presidential term. So it truly matters that we have someone competent who's ready to lead as vice president.
No, I think you're exactly right. And it comes with not only having someone who can do the position, but has proven that they can do the position, either from a government standpoint, or I think a governor actually might be someone that they end up going for. Someone's proved that they can fill an executive role compared to just filling the legislature or something, kind of having that insider type of education and knowledge that traditionally got the role in the past. But Brad, I appreciate you coming on. A lot's happening right now. I appreciate you coming on, breaking down the elections, which has since taken a back burner amid this outbreak. Thank you very much.